Like a lot of rock stars of his era, it's a little surprising that Guns N' Roses frontman Axl Rose is even still alive. From a scary childhood to dangerous close calls to way too many untimely losses, tragedy has never been far away from him. Axl Rose's stepfather, Stephen Bailey, strictly adhered to his Pentecostal faith, and he insisted that his family do the same, a situation that left his stepson feeling brainwashed. As Rose explained in a 1992 interview, "I'm not against churches or religion, but I do believe that most organized religions make a mockery of humanity." Rose was particularly upset by the hypocrisy that he witnessed and how emotional harm was passed on through generations. He was also confused about the fluctuations in what the church considered to be evil. As he recalled, "We'd have televisions one week, then my stepdad would throw them out because they were satanic." Ultimately, Rose's entire childhood religious experience wound up having the opposite effect than his stepfather intended. As he put it, "The Bible was shoved down my throat, and it really distorted my point of view. We were taught you must fear God. I don't think that's healthy at all." Axl Rose hasn't pulled any punches when discussing his childhood, as he's made claims of mental and physical abuse. According to a story recounted in Mick Wall's book, W. Axl Rose, The Unauthorized Biography, conflict reached a peak after Rose discovered that Stephen Bailey was not his biological father, but his stepfather. He wanted answers, but he wasn't getting them, so he lashed out. As he once explained in an interview, "I was separated from myself at an early age, and my stepfather made sure I never put myself back together with his confusing and mixed messages."
Child abuse is like kind of the key to why there's so many problems in the world today.
Rose's stepfather condemned him for his alcohol and drug use when he was a teenager, at a time when Rose insisted he wasn't using anything. Eventually, his stepdad kicked him out of the house when he was only 17. According to Rose, the reason was because he wasn't cutting his hair, even though it wasn't particularly long at the time. In 1988, Guns N' Roses were at the height of their fame, having just released their era-defining album Appetite for Destruction the year before. So they were a huge draw at that year's edition of Monsters of Rock, an annual hard rock and heavy metal festival held at Castle Donington in England. There was heavy rainfall, and the event's organizers didn't set any rules for crowd control, which made for a restless audience of over 100,000 people making their way towards the stage. This dangerous situation sadly resulted in the death of 2 fans, who were suffocated and trampled. Axl Rose and his bandmates weren't aware of this tragic turn of events as it was happening, though they did find out just hours afterwards. As GNR guitarist Slash recalled to Kerrang in 2021, "I ran into our tour manager at the bar and he was crying. That's when I found out that 2 kids had been trampled to death. There was a bizarre shift from complete euphoria to going to this depressed state. The positive memory of the gig got washed away. It was heavy." Axl Rose has had frequent run-ins with the law, thanks to a series of violent outbursts directed at his neighbors, security guards, and authority figures. For example, during a 1987 concert in Atlanta, he reportedly struck a police officer. The concert promoter worked out a deal that if Rose apologized to the officer, they wouldn't arrest him. But after writing the apology, he threw out a profanity-filled insult and was ultimately arrested anyway. Then, in 1998, before a flight out of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport in Phoenix, Rose reportedly became so enraged at a security guard searching his baggage that he threatened to beat him up. And in 2006, Norwegian police arrested the singer after he was accused of drunkenly attacking and biting a hotel security guard. One of Axl Rose's most notorious legal incidents happened in 1990, when he was arrested after his neighbor Gabriella Cantor made some serious allegations. She claimed that they were arguing about loud music when Rose threw her car keys out the window and then hit her with a wine bottle. But Rose insisted that she was the aggressor. As he said, "It's really weird. She cranks my music all the time."
I live next door to a psycho.
Rose also claimed that she was the one who threw the bottle at him, and when she tried to break into his apartment, he called the building's management and requested help from law enforcement. She did the same, and afterwards went to the hospital, where she was examined and released. That wasn't the end of the story, though, as Rose further claimed that he was being harassed by law enforcement for lodging a noise complaint. The incident went on to inspire the Guns N' Roses song Right Next Door to Hell. The case was ultimately dismissed about a month later, as the Los Angeles District Attorney determined that there was insufficient evidence that Rose actually hit Cantor with a bottle. During a 1991 Guns N' Roses concert in New York City, Axl Rose attempted a powerful jump during a performance of You Could Be Mine, but he landed wrong, resulting in a foot injury that left him in a cast for a handful of concert dates. 25 years later, while singing Mr. Brownstone during the first show of a GNR reunion tour, Rose slipped on stage and broke a bone in his foot so severely that it required realignment surgery. Then, in 2018, the band had to end another concert early when Rose's stomach pain became too much to bear. He told the crowd at the beginning of the show that he'd been throwing up for the past 5 hours. A similar turn of events went down at a Chicago concert in 2021. As Rose revealed on Twitter, "I got to the show feeling great, but started getting sick pretty early on. It progressed to where I was throwing up and was lightheaded." Guns N' Roses were one of the biggest bands on the planet during their late 1980s heyday. But the good times didn't last forever. By 1997, infighting and creative tensions led to every Appetite for Destruction era member, minus Rose, leaving the band. Then, over the next couple of decades, Axl Rose and Slash engaged in a war of words and legal filings.
I decided, I think this is the end of the line.
Their relationship really began to deteriorate in earnest in 1991, when Slash left a GNR tour to collaborate with Michael Jackson. As a victim of child abuse, Rose distrusted Jacent due to the abuse allegations that had been levied against him. Then in 2005, Slash and GNR bassist Duff McKagan sued Rose for allegedly freezing them out of their royalty revenue shares, which were then valued at about $500,000 per year. Months later, Rose countersued, and his management group called Slash an opportunist and manipulator. 3 years after that, Rose called Slash a cancer in an interview with Spinner, while Slash told Rolling Stone that Rose hated his guts. Rose put it bluntly when he told Billboard in 2009, "One of the two of us will die before a reunion, and however sad, ugly, or unfortunate anyone views it, it is how it is." Despite all that, in 2016, Rose and Slash happily reunited under the Guns N' Roses moniker. While some of Axl Rose's most controversial moments may have been of his own making, there have also been plenty of times that he was wrongfully harassed. As he was quoted in W. Axl Rose, the unauthorized biography, "The cops hated me. I got thrown in jail over 20 times, and 5 of those times I was guilty." And some of Rose's friends have corroborated his version of events. According to his former girlfriend, Gina Seiler, there were times when he was arrested for nothing more than walking down the street. As she recalled, these police were making comments, making gestures, because they thought he was a woman, until he turned around, and they were very embarrassed to find out it was a male. So they started hassling him. Rose ended up behind bars soon afterward. His childhood friend Monica Gregory told a similar story that was recounted in Paul Stenning's book Guns N' Roses, The Band That Time Forgot. The confrontation involved Rose, Gregory's ex-husband Dana, and a random group who started bullying them. As Gregory put it, the guys with the ties and short hair were yelling obscenities at Axl and Dana because they had long hair. All the cops came in and basically beat the crap out of Axl, just because. It takes a certain type of resilient personality to be able to deal with the relentless attention that superstardom brings. But Axl Rose has been candid about the fact that he was ill-suited to the spotlight. As he admitted to Rolling Stone in 1989, "When I was growing up, I was never really popular. Now everybody wants to be my friend. I like my privacy, to live alone in my own little world. I live in a security building, and all my calls are screened. I don't even know my own phone number."
We got used to, as the Eagles would say, everything all the time.
Rose also admitted that he had multiple guns nearby to help himself feel safe, despite insisting, "I'm not paranoid." Rose also admitted that he wanted fame, but actually experiencing it was a whole different beast. He talked about this double-edged sword in 1993 when he told Hit Parader, "I like to be real private. You don't always want everyone around you, even when they like you. But at the same time, if they're not there, you wonder what you're doing wrong." It certainly didn't help that the media often portrayed Rose and his bandmates in a strikingly negative light. As he put it during an interview in 1989, "It seems to be that we're a spectacle, a freak show. Magazines are more interested in who fell over last night than the music. I'm to the point where I'm tired of being a spectacle." In 2023, Axl Rose was accused of sexually assaulting a former Penthouse model back in 1989. He later moved to have the lawsuit dismissed, and as of mid-2024, the case is still pending. But that's not the only time that he's been called out for abuse, as his relationships with his ex-girlfriend Stephanie Seymour and ex-wife Erin Everly both ended with him facing accusations of domestic violence. Those cases were filed against Rose in 1994 and were ultimately settled out of court. At the time, People magazine reported Everly as saying, "There's so much anger in him. Maybe I was this easy person to take it out on." Everly also said, "I was looking for someone who wanted to get married, have a bunch of children, and a station wagon." In 1990, Everly became pregnant with Rose's child, but then had a miscarriage 3 months into the pregnancy. Their marriage was ultimately annulled in 1991, with Everly admitting, "I'd lost everything. I had no more fight and no more compassion for the abuse he had gone through." Some people might say that there's no such thing as bad publicity, but not Axl Rose. Back in 1989, Guns N' Roses attracted some not-so-great headlines when their song "One in a Million" was condemned for racism owing to its use of the N-word. One of their harshest critics was future Second Lady Tipper Gore, who spearheaded the campaign to put labels on albums with explicit lyrics.
We were able to get the recording industry to understand a legitimate consumer viewpoint.
While the notoriety of being labeled explicit could conceivably get an album more attention, there was also a serious downside, as it meant being removed from the shelves of big retailers like Kmart and Walmart. At the time, those two chains were responsible for about half of Guns N' Roses' record sales. As Rose explained to Hit Parader in 2005, "You've got to realize that certain income families don't let their kids shop just anywhere. When I was growing up, we were a Kmart family, so I speak from experience. You could look wherever you wanted, but you bought things at Kmart because it's a little cheaper." Gore did achieve her goal. First, albums had to be stickered, then stores wouldn't carry stickered albums. Blind Melon was Guns N' Roses' opening act for their Use Your Illusion tour, but they were also much more than that. Axl Rose and Blind Melon frontman Shannon Hoon were from the same town in Indiana, and Rose also knew Hoon's half-sister from high school. But their time together was also filled with decadence and drug abuse, and it all culminated tragically on October 21, 1995. That was when Hoon died of a heart attack caused by a cocaine overdose. Rose reportedly took Hoon's death incredibly hard. It cemented his beliefs about the dangers of fame, and it also happened at the same time that he learned about his mother Sharon's cancer diagnosis. She died in 1996, and then the year after that, one of his oldest friends, West Arkeen, died of an overdose. Some songs are more complicated than others, and when it comes to Guns N' Roses' discography, perhaps none is more complicated than their 1991 release, Coma. The previous year, during an interview with Kurt Loder, Axl Rose admitted, "I started writing about when I OD'd 4 years ago, and the reason I OD'd was because of stress. I couldn't take it."
I'm starting to self-destruct. It's starting to tear up my life. I have to figure out how to channel my energies other directions.
Rose ended up in the hospital and was fully conscious of the fact that he was near death, but he also knew that he still had work that he wanted to do and that it wasn't his time. The song ended up being incredibly difficult to write, as he wanted to make sure that nobody would interpret it as a suggestion that they should follow in his footsteps. As he acknowledged, "It's really tricky, and I'm still playing with the words to figure out how to show some hope in there." It's no secret that the mid-90s were a tough period for Guns N' Roses, with Steven Adler, Izzy Stradlin, Slash, and Duff McKagan all leaving the band. At the same time, Axl Rose was becoming increasingly reclusive, leaving fans and journalists wondering what exactly was going on amidst rumors of a new release. But in all fairness to Rose, he was dealing with a lot that would understandably take a toll on anyone. Specifically, his mother Sharon died at the age of 51 in 1996 following a cancer diagnosis. Rose had complicated feelings about his mother and her death, particularly at such a young age and at such a turbulent time in his life. As recounted in W. Axl Rose, the unauthorized biography, he never had the chance to fully reconcile all those feelings. He did manage to spend some time with his mom before she passed away, but he also struggled to come to terms with the fact that the woman he had loved so dearly had failed to protect him from the alleged abuses at the hands of his birth father and stepfather. The long-running feud between Axl Rose and Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain was portrayed as the stuff of hate-filled trash-talking, but the truth was actually a little more complicated than that. Rose reportedly went out of his way to see Nirvana perform, and he even made it clear that he hoped that they would cover Welcome to the Jungle. He also included a Nirvana baseball cap in the Don't Cry music video, and he invited the whole group to perform at his 30th birthday and on GNR's Get in the Ring tour. But things went sideways when Cobain spoke out against Guns N' Roses' famously hedonistic lifestyle and their controversial song One in a Million. As he reportedly said, "They're really talentless people, and they write crap music." Those in the know witnessed how Rose was incredibly hurt by these insults. According to Bryn Bridenthal of Geffen Records, he was especially devastated by the news of Cobain's untimely death in 1994. As Bridenthal recounted, he felt things really deeply, and he felt a real connection there, even though there was no connection from the other side. I think he had a lot of empathy for Kurt. Nirvana manager Danny Goldberg felt much the same way, telling Yahoo in 2022 they were just culturally in different camps at that time. It's just as likely as not that they would be friends if Kurt were alive today.
But at that moment in time, it was like two clashing philosophies.
By the time that Chinese Democracy was released in 2008, 17 years had passed since the last album of original Guns N' Roses material. Sales figures were disappointing, and Axl Rose shouldered much of the blame for his unwillingness to tour or do much in the way of promotion. In an interview with Billboard, he made it clear that he was just as disappointed by the whole process as everyone else. Specifically, he admitted that he'd been in almost constant fear that the band would be forced to release the album before it was ready, and he acknowledged that the entire thing was a mess. He cited such issues as a lack of support from his record companies and a complete failure to secure a producer. On top of all that, before Chinese Democracy was actually released, 9 tracks from the album were leaked. This was especially disheartening for Rose. As he told Billboard, having someone jeopardize your efforts so cavalierly is pretty much a nightmare. To add insult to injury, Rose also revealed that he knew the source of one of the earliest leaks. As he explained, "Our first leaks were from using a sound system in a strip club in the early hours when it was basically empty. I went there to play the tracks for someone I was interested in working with. I'd gone there with a guy who worked band security, who was allegedly somehow related to the owners, feeling it was a bit more of a protected environment than it turned out to be." If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, please contact the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP, 1-800-662-4357.